Because we
In the name of Jesus.
Oh, thank you.
Standing in the office of the prophet of God, I execute judgment on you, COVID-19. I execute judgment on you, Satan. You destroyer. You killer. You get out. You break your power. You get off this nation. I demand judgment on you. I demand a vaccination to come immediately. I call you done. I call you doggone. You come down from your place of authority, destroyer. You come down and you crawl on your belly like God commanded you when he put his foot on your head in the Garden of Eden. You will destroy through COVID-19. No more!
No more. No more.
It is finished. It is over. And the United States of America is healed and well again, saith the mighty.
Hallelujah. Glory.
You're listening to the All Out War podcast.
That's right. Oh, I love that guitar.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah. Sometimes I just, I feel like I see something on the internet and I'm like, dude, we got to share that. And even though it's already viral and people are like, oh, I remember hearing this or whatever. But that was awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah. The best was the little dude that was with him. If you saw the video on Instagram, like it was going around, there was like a guy that was standing next to him when he's like, come in. And the guy in the back was like, oh yeah, amen, amen. That just made me laugh so much.
Yeah.
Oh, what's up, everybody?
Hey.
How you doing, Rach?
Hey. I'm still a zombie, honestly. We got back late from our trip, and yeah, I took a nap, and I never take naps, so that's how I'm doing.
Oh man, yeah. This is December the 6th right now. This episode.
Yeah. Hey, did you know?
What?
It's our 100th episode. I wanted to get that in. I wanted to be.
How dare you?
It is our 100th episode, man. That is crazy.
I though?
I don't know. I
was stealing the thunder.
I was trying to.
Smoking that sticky green stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
I still remember when Rachel one time sent me a video, a text message video, I think it was, of her kids saying that at the dinner table. You see these two little kids, her little kids are so cute, and they were just like smoking that sticky green stuff.
Oh, maybe here I'm going to say this before anything, to drill down to all our audience or people that may be new.
Yeah,
that's ironic. Like that sound bit. We don't smoke weed. We don't do drugs.
We don't.
And anything. If you ever hear a can opening,
right,
it's Coke Zero.
Yeah.
Just for the new people that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize we've been a big fan of Coke Zero from the beginning. In fact, we were trying to get them to endorse us, and we ended up with the wonderful Kahi Coffee, which
is that why your logo is like the same color?
Oh my God! Wait, yo, I never noticed that. I swear to.
That's awesome.
We gotta hit.
It's very on brand.
Yeah,
that is awesome. I never realized that.
Yeah,
but yes. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to drill down into everybody to know that we don't do drugs.
We don't do drugs.
We don't drink.
No,
I don't drink.
Not on the podcast. You don't drink. Yeah,
I don't drink.
You have you're how many years?
2 days. In 2 days.
Yeah.
It'll be 10.5 years.
10.5 years sober.
Yeah.
Dude, congratulations.
Thanks.
That is awesome. What an amazing feat. That is great.
Thanks. But anyways, yeah. Again, just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
There's no reason that I would be saying that.
Yeah.
But
And
just in case people hear that, it's ironic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've given our testimonies on previous episodes before.
We have, yeah.
But not everyone listens, so just wanted to say that we don't do drugs.
That's right. We don't. But so not
And we don't just
not
read
illegal
from
drug-
Wikipedia.
Right. No, I don't read from Wikipedia. I mean, I do read from Wikipedia, but we'll tell you.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what it says here.
Anyways,
So this is episode number 100. It's a special episode for us. I don't know about you listening, but for us, it's really special because this is landmark. I think I read somewhere that there are over 600,000 podcasts on Apple iTunes alone. And
you said this like a year or two ago.
Yeah,
I
so
remember. So
it might be more than
probably
that.
more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to remember my
Yeah,
stats,
oh,
but
yeah.
and I think somewhere like along the lines of like 80% of them don't have more than 12 episodes.
Yeah.
So that means that a vast majority of the podcasts out there are just kind of laying around, or they started and never went anywhere.
Yeah.
And because it's hard, it's not easy. And
I think it's easy. It's easy
I mean,
because it's fun.
it's fun. If it's fun, it's easy, and that's
Yeah.
what I was always told. If you love your job, it'll never be hard to go to work, right? But yeah. So this is episode 100, and we wanted to just kind of. I actually titled this episode "How Did We Get Here?"
Nice.
And so, and if you follow us on Instagram, which I would ask you to do, if you don't follow us on Instagram, please go follow us on Instagram. It's just the All Out War Podcast, and we will follow you back typically. I do that. I'm not that type of person where I have like 1,000 followers and 2 that I'm following. I can't stand that. That is the most, in my opinion, that is just arrogant. It's like, you follow me, I don't give a rat's butt about you.
That's how I am on Twitter.
Is that how you are on Twitter?
Yeah, my follower ratio is, yeah.
But some people like that because it makes them feel good.
I just don't want to follow a lot of people because people have interesting stuff to say.
Yeah. Well, I actually love our listeners, and
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna say this is Twitter, and nobody follows me on Twitter for the podcast.
Twitter's horrible, anyways.
Yeah.
It's just a horrible platform.
It is. Oh,
But anyways, yeah. So if you follow us on Instagram, then you would have known that I put out a question on our story. And then I even put a post that said, hey, go check out our story. Well, obviously the story's been over 24 hours. It ended sometime this morning. And so I had a couple people, we had, I don't know, a handful of people that actually sent in questions for us. So that was kind of cool.
How about we should preface this by saying we don't have any topic today.
Specific topic, yeah.
Yeah, because it's 100, and this is, like you said, this is kind of for us as well to like reflect on and be. So don't expect like any conspiracy stuff or stuff.
I mean,
we're just gonna be talking about stuff.
Yeah. But and we're gonna talk a little bit of history too.
Yeah.
But and I want to add too. Should I talk about the Chartable thing? Should I mention that?
If you want to.
What do you think, Rach? Should I tell them about the Chartable?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I got an email from Chartable. We're on Chartable, and on the week of the 29th of November, we were ranked 171 in the United States and 200 and something. Was it
220 something?
220 something globally for religion and spirituality podcasts.
Yeah.
Which is crazy across the board. We somehow ranked 171 in the United States for a week. So we were
221 in global.
Yeah.
Or it's 220 something.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I was like, I had no idea. So whatever you guys are doing, keep doing it. I think, they're sharing, we have the best listeners in the world. They share us and stuff. And I love that. It's so cool. So anyways, thank you. It's just amazing to me. It blows me away. Like I said, my dog won't even listen to me, so I can't imagine anyone else would. But
I tune you out.
You tune me out. Thanks, man. I love you too. So this podcast, just go back a little bit of history here. We started in 2018, way back when. Episode 1, we had Zach.
Yeah.
He's the video gamer. And so if you on Twitch, go check out Hehe TV and his wife. And Hehe's wifey, I think, or wifey Hehe or something. I can't remember what her handle is on Instagram or Twitter, but Yeah, so he came on and we talked about video games
July 17th.
July 17th
Yeah.
of 2018.
Yeah.
And it started off with
Well,
what?
I want to say,
Yeah,
which is funny, that is not the first podcast we recorded.
it is not.
We recorded probably like 2 or 3 before that.
Okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah. You really?
Yeah,
Oh.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we didn't use them.
No. And nobody will ever hear them ever again.
I probably got rid of them.
Probably.
I wonder if there's somewhere in some
Yeah.
hard drive I saved them.
Yeah. But anyway, I just want to say, yeah, there's lost episodes.
Yeah,
And they deserve to be lost. They were not good.
they were not good. Some would say none of them are good. But
I would say that, yeah.
I mean, I would say we've been accused. I mean, I think it was our very first iTunes review was these guys have no idea what they're talking about, and then the username was Sippy Dick.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. It gave us
You-
one star.
And I told you don't worry about him, and he still is talking about it 2 years later. Like the one negative review we ever got was
But it
this
was
guy.
the first review. That was
Yeah.
the thing that bugged me the most. And then we got another negative review not too long ago, and it didn't discourage me or anything like that. It made me laugh because I think people like if I'm gonna review something, me personally, I don't go in to trash it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do.
Like if I don't like how you do that,
Yeah.
or are you like
If
one of those
something's bad,
Yelp?
I'll write a review. No, I don't use Yelp, but
Yeah.
if something's bad, I'll go out of my way. Yeah.
I just don't use it anymore. I just don't like if I don't like a podcast, I'll just stop listening.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. And if I find out you listen to it, I'll be like, you listen to that for what?
Yeah. Well, I don't leave reviews for podcasts. I leave reviews
Yeah.
for other stuff.
Yeah. Like what? Like food, restaurants?
No, like companies that I buy stuff from.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If
That,
it's
I think
trash, and I'll be like, this is trash.
I think that is important.
Yeah.
I think that is actually important. I mean, we're free. No one's paying for this.
Yeah.
This is a free thing. So, anyways, trash us. I don't care. I mean, that's fine. But it does bring down our overall rating on iTunes.
Yeah.
If that matters. But we have other really wonderful.
Yeah, a lot more.
Yeah.
So
Lots that are like privately messaged and not even on the ratings in the app, which is crazy because I feel like iTunes or like, the podcast app, they have to stay like balanced. So they always show up that one negative review alongside the other positive reviews, no matter how many good reviews we get.
yeah, that's true, and it keeps us humble.
Yeah.
Sippy Dick, I owe Sippy Dick I tip my hat to you, Sippy Dick. You have been kind to me in your bad review.
You've turned him into a vindictive person that will never ever let it go. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm
You
not.
fueled his hate. You
No, I'm
fueled
not.
Turner's hate
I am not a. I
and
am.
desire to be.
I'm not that
the
type of
best ever.
person. I'm not that.
I know, I'm just
It
kidding.
does. Yeah, but it does fuel me to be better.
Yeah.
All right. So let me. I should just start here with some of the questions. Let me just start with the common. We got a couple common questions, so I'll start with that one the most.
Okay.
The one that I got was, "Hey, I'm new here." This is one of the last ones we got. "I'm totally new here, and I will not say her name because I don't want to. If they don't want to be heard, but they'll know who they are, and hopefully they're hearing this and they'll smile. I'm totally new here. How do you all know each other, and why did you start this podcast?" And I think that's a great way to start. So, yeah. So Rachel and I go back further than Rosie and I go back. Rachel. So, all right. So I guess I was for 16 years, I was vocationally, I was a pastor vocationally. That was my job, my main job. And so towards the end of my vocational ministry at one church that I'd been at for a long time, I was a young adult pastor. So I got to hang out with a bunch of young adults. It was great. I loved it. And at the very beginning of that ministry, I met Rachel. She moved into the area, came to church on a Sunday. I happened to be at the information booth for the church, or somebody told her to find me or something like that. And she introduced herself, and I was like, yeah, we meet on Mondays. Come on out. So she came out, and then the guy that was leading worship for us, for the young adults ministry, she started crushing on him. And I couldn't keep her away from him. And Andrew was like, "Hey man, can you get this psycho girl away from me, man? Like I just want to do ministry."
On a second.
Sorry.
I want to clear up the record by saying Andrew was actually like acting like a middle schooler, even though he was the young adult pastor and a middle school pastor too, or worship pastor. But he was like throwing stuff at me. He was throwing like pieces of paper at me from across the room, and I was like, "Oh, really? This is how the young adults is going to be."
Absolutely, that's how young adult guys act. They don't know what to do. They're scared. They're more scared of you. Oh, if you're a young adult woman and you're listening to this, I want you to understand you have all the power. Just know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They have all the power. They don't realize it.
Yeah.
Which is probably good. So, yeah, Rachel saw Andrew and he was mad crushing on her. And then she was like, I don't know, playing hard to get. I don't know if I want to have a boyfriend right now. I'm going to go to Nova. I'm going to draw pictures of owls and things like that. I just remember one time you had this like book and you had coffee, and she was like the classic hipster, like worked in a coffee shop. She's a phenomenal artist, by the way. I wasn't just mocking you about the owl. You actually are a really great artist. And so they met. And so I've known Rachel for longer, and they married.
Yeah.
And I got to do the wedding, and my claim to fame for that is I mispronounced Rachel's maiden name. So that was great. I was a little nervous. It was one of my first weddings. I think I'd only done one other wedding before that.
Oh, dude. Wow. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah. And so so they got married, and Andrew and I continued to work in ministry together, and he led worship, and but then the Lord sent us all different directions, you know? So I've known Rachel probably, how many years do you think it has been? 7, 8 years?
2014. It was like January 4th or something like that. I had literally moved up the day before, came to Cornerstone the next day, and then the first young adults meeting was the day after that.
It was the very first young adult meeting you were at?
It was like the first official one. I think that the previous one had been like a Christmas party or something.
That's right. I forgot about that.
But then, yeah, it was the very first one.
Wow. She has a good memory. I had totally forgotten about that. And then, so then they got married. They did their thing. And then I met Rosie when you came to Young Adults. This is years later. Probably, how many years have you and I been hanging out now? About 3.5, 4 years?
Yeah, I moved back up to the area in 2016.
Okay, so it'll be almost 4 years, almost 5 years. So Rosie, I remember it was summertime because we were doing our young adult meetings on Monday nights outside in the courtyard behind the church, and everybody was sitting on the hillside, and we did worship and stuff. And that was fun. And you came up and
well, how about I'll say this before?
Yeah.
I had come a couple times, and nobody was nice to me, so I stopped going. And then when I came back.
Oh, wow, that makes me feel great.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say just the environment was very hostile and nobody liked me. And just kidding.
It actually was like a really great ministry. It was, for me in that time, it was a great time of ministry. Yeah. I really, really loved it.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
So you came up to me after one of the services. I think I was doing a sermon series, and I talked about Islam. And that piqued your interest.
Well, you were doing a service about, well, first you had seen me a couple times. I think I'd gone before we started that summer one when we were still inside.
Okay.
And you were like, hey, nice tattoos. Because I have tattoos, and it was summer, so they were showing. So
yeah.
You came up and
you have a lot of tattoos.
Yeah, and you were like, hey, I want to get tattoos or something. You said something, you're like, I've been thinking of these, and I was like, cool. And then I felt comfortable. And then you were doing a series on apologetics.
Okay.
And I think you had said, because you hadn't done Islam yet, and then I brought you,
You brought me this cool book.
Yeah, and I said, you should read this before you do it, because there's good stuff in there that you might get in trouble if you say.
Yeah. So I knew that at that point, I was like, oh, this guy's like, we're connecting. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And then
we met at like a Robex or a tropical smoothie.
Was it? Did we really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you gave me your email address and you're like, hey, email me. And then I emailed you. You're like, let's hang out. Let's meet up at tropical smoothie or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my thing. I had to like, they gave me
Yeah.
like a certain amount of money to go out to coffee shops and stuff and meet with young adults. So I had to like make sure I used that.
Then why did you make me pay?
You offered, man. I don't want to steal your blessing. But yeah, and so then my friend Cody, which he's on a couple of these podcasts.
He was one of the original guests.
He was one of the original
Or
co-hosts.
co-hosts,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so Cody was like, so Cody would come over to my house on Sunday nights and we would watch The Walking Dead. And what would happen is we were hanging out and then we'd start talking about stuff and we were like, oh man. And he always had a really great take. He's a smart guy and he does a lot. He consumes a ton of information. And he had been leading Bible studies and things like that. And he had a ministry going called Shield Wall. And I think did you go to
Yeah.
that Bible study?
Yeah.
Yeah. So somehow you ended up at my house on Sunday nights too. I think we just invited you over because we liked you. And then one day, I don't know if it was Cody or me or you, I don't know, one of us said we should just do a podcast. And I was like, all right, that's all I needed. So I like started buying equipment and set up my basement and we're sitting in here right now. And so Cody started with us and he did a couple episodes and then Cody's like, peace out, fellas. I'm going to go do my own Shield Wall podcast. And so he went to do the Shield Wall podcast with Ethan, who's been a guest on our podcast as well. And then it was just you and me. And I was like, well, we're still going to keep going, man. Like,
Yeah.
let Cody go do his thing. We'll do our thing. And we rock and rolled, man. And then we just kept going.
Yeah.
So that was how we met, and that was how we got the podcast going. It came out of a conversation we were having
Yeah.
during The Walking Dead. So we can thank the zombies blame it on the zombies, right? And it was probably prophetic because after everybody gets these vaccinations, they're going to be zombies too. So we'll have a lot to talk about. But so that was how we met, and I will be honest. And I want you guys to talk too. I don't, but for me, so this is a little bit of like the backstory too of the podcast for me. As I was soon after we started, my relationship with the church I was working at dissolved, and it was a really difficult time for me. And I just had, I think through the wounds of some of that and the frustration, and it was a really difficult season for me. I think this was therapeutic.
Yeah.
I think there was one for sure episode that we did not air where
Yeah.
it became a venting session. It was so therapeutic. It was so amazing. And I think what happened was the Lord looked out for me because I went to go and hit save in the file and I actually deleted it by accident. And I was like, guys, I just accidentally deleted we talked for like 2.5 hours or something
It was
crazy.
long.
And you guys are like, what? And I was like, I accidentally deleted it. And that was the Lord's protection. He doesn't want me, he doesn't want us railing.
Yeah. I will say that I feel like that's happened a couple times. Like there was a couple in the beginning that were just bad and we're like, this is not good. We're not going to put it out. And there's been a couple that I can think of, one guest that we recorded and we're just like that. We're not going to post that one. And then
I know exactly what you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was some others that I feel like that's happened multiple times where we've gotten saved or we've had to restart over.
Oh man, like technical difficulties that just
But there's I remember one we were talking about something that was kind of like like this is kind of iffy or something, like
I do
some
remember
stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we like go to do something or you just look down and you're like, it hasn't been recording for an hour. Like you're like, I hit record and it's not record. It did not record any of that. We're like, okay, well maybe we should just not talk about whatever we were just talking
the
about.
Lord protecting us, man.
So there's been a couple times.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to share too, and if you're listening and you're just like, what are they just rambling? Yeah, we are just rambling. This is a completely selfish episode.
Yeah.
For us. So
Don't listen to it. Wait for the next one.
Right, wait for the next one.
That's what I was trying to say at the beginning. Is like, if you don't want to hear about all the talking of them, this is a bad podcast.
Yeah, I will say the one, the one criticism that I've gotten other than Sippy Dick was on YouTube, because we send these to YouTube from the audio, and I got one person like put a comment one time of like, it starts at 19 minutes or something like that. So
Oh my god.
the topic started at 19 minutes of where we like, okay, let's talk about what we wanted to talk about, you know, after we get caught up for the week and,
Well,
you know, do the did you know?
I remember that one was on the Clinton body count, and we talked for like 10 minutes. That's because that was right when like all of a sudden we had like these 3 or 4 guests on in a row.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like the number, so we started experiencing getting like shadow banned.
Yeah.
Like all this crazy funky stuff just happened. People were like, because there were people like a month or 2 later, they're like, hey, are you still doing the podcast? Because
Yeah.
they were like asking, they're like, you disappeared off my iPhone. Like nobody with Android had any of those issues. I'm just saying. But like
They're in on it. That's why.
yeah, so I remember that particular. We were going through all the crazy stuff that was happening.
Yeah. And it turns out that the Clinton body count was like one of our most listened to YouTubes.
Yeah.
Like thousands and thousands of listens,
Yeah.
you know, on it. And I couldn't believe it I just randomly went in to check it like a month after we had recorded, and I was like, 3,000 views. What? And I was like, how in the world? I'm like,
Yeah.
how does this happen? You know? So, which it totally went some kind of viral or something, or the algorithms on YouTube just let it show up somehow. I don't know. I don't know how that worked. Maybe it was the 19 minutes of babbling that we did ahead of time.
That iTunes just gave up on it.
They're like, oh, they're not doing
Nothing
anything
here,
bad.
yeah.
The censors just gave up. But that was cool. My personal favorite episode is, I think it's episode 33, ironically, with when we were talking about the Ebens, the aliens.
Oh.
So we went through this.
33 was Mediate Theology.
Oh, Mediate Theology with Olson, Dr. Olson.
Yeah.
Which one was the aliens?
41.
Episode 41. Okay. So, about the hour mark in there, Rosie, you were reading from some guy's journal. We had this crazy journal from this dude.
Yeah.
And, he had done all of this like research on these alien.
He just made it up.
He made it up.
It was just like obscure. It wasn't not an Angel Fire website. It wasn't a WordPress site. It was a Blogspot.
Blogspot. Yeah.
Yeah, and he just had outlined all these different. Like he claimed he was this this guy, and he was like, I've met all the aliens out there. Yes. That's like in the About Me or like thing. He's like, listen, I've met all of the aliens. Like I've met all of them. They talk to me. Let me tell you about them.
Yeah.
So we broke him down, and he was like, yo, like these guys came over and they told me this about how they do stuff or whatever. Anyways, so. And
he kept referring to them as the male Ebens and the female Ebens and things like that. And Eben is an actual desert. Like that's I've read about Ebens and alien, you know, stuff. And, but there was one part where he was talking about the sexuality of the Ebens. And I just couldn't hold it together. And I just started laughing. I was trying to read it because we were taking turns going back and forth reading out this journal. And I just couldn't. It was one of those laughs where I was crying. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. And sometimes when I'm like bored, I'll go find that spot and just listen to it again because it just makes me laugh. And that's when we had live audience. We had people coming over and hanging out in the room with us, just chilling while we were recording. And they were like dying too. They were like trying not to make noise, laughing. It was just so great. That was my absolute favorite. Episode.
You know what my favorite episode was?
Which one?
It was the one that you made of the compilation of me talking the most.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
The every did you know?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. That's not actually my favorite. How self-absorbed is that? If I would have
like that,
that actually was my best.
Well, speaking of being self-absorbed, someone did ask a question They said, "How is Rosie single? He sounds so hot." So people like your voice, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and for the record, Rosie is single.
Yeah.
So how are you single? Why are you just saving yourself for someone special? Are you like, are you?
Well, first of all, I thought you were going to say, who sent you that, by the way? Because I might want to reach out to you.
It looks like Rosie sent me this. Looks like you did this, man. That's funny, man. But for the record, you are single.
Yeah, more or less.
More or less.
Sort of.
Hey, look, man.
You know what? It's
if there ain't a ring, it ain't a thing, man. That's what I'm gonna say.
There you go. So, but I would say on Facebook,
Yeah,
it's complicated.
it's complicated. But look, he's not beyond exploring new opportunities and options.
I might get in trouble for that.
You will. Yeah. Like I said, man, if you settle down on one person, I'll do your premarital for you guys.
All right, thanks.
So, oh man, Rachel, you can cut in here on any time if you want.
Dude, my favorite episode, man, I keep sending my different favorites. I love the one where you guys are interviewing the guy with the alien abduction like nonprofit.
Oh man.
That one was so mind-blowing for me because I kept getting like questions where people were not able to like reconcile aliens with like a biblical worldview. And after that, I was just like, wait a minute, it makes so much sense. Like, it's not either or, it's like and both, but this is a secular worldview of it, and people just can't like wrap their head around it. So that was really interesting. But the problem is, anytime I would go and send that episode to people to listen to, I would have to make sure that it wasn't the aliens episode that you were just talking about, episode 41. Just because, like, I think I did that one time. I was like, wait a minute, I don't think this is the right episode. Don't listen to that one.
don't listen to that one.
Not if you're trying to get some alien info and insight. It just wasn't the right one that I had meant to send.
Yeah, well,
But
I think
I love that one.
I was going to say,
ahead.
I want
Go
to
ahead.
preface this with, I think we kind of glazed over this or didn't even talk about it, which is pretty cool, is that Rachel, before she came to join us on the podcast, used to listen to it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, because the way you said it, where you're like my favorite podcast of you guys, which may
True.
sound kind of kind of weird or whatever, but
That's a great point. Yeah.
So yeah,
Did not mean that. I just mostly meant I was not a guest, or I was not like a co-host at that time. But
No, yeah.
I've been listening since day one. You know.
That's what I was gonna say. Is so weird. Like, it's always weird to me that anybody listens, but I just wanted to say we didn't even talk about how Rachel jumped in and became involved with this, but she was. I don't know how to say this in a weird way, but yeah, she listened to the podcast because you guys moved away from the area, so she wasn't here, and then
she's super encouraging. Like she was always like sending like Instagram encouraging notes and like just questions and stuff. It was always cool.
Yeah, but I just want to further explore. So we stayed, in contact, and then eventually,
that's right. Well, she was on a journey of kind of getting woke, and I was, I think me too. I think this podcast has been somewhat for me, not only therapeutic from the whole church thing into now I'm sort of bivocational. I still serve at a church, and if they want to pay me, they can. I don't ask for it, but then I have a full-time job and a different full-time job, not in ministry. And in that time, when we started doing some of these episodes about like aliens, about Bigfoot, about ghosts and church history and some of the stuff where I really had an opportunity to spend time before the episode for weeks if I wanted to, before we would actually record it, just getting all my ducks in a row and figuring out what I really did believe about stuff. It was like a journey for me personally. Every episode, it was helping define things that I never had heard in church. Like I never heard a pastor from the pulpit say, hey, look, if you believe in aliens, I just want to make it clear to you right now, this is what they are. and explain that they're these, fallen angel entities or some deceptive spiritual force, and the fact that I'd never heard that in church, I had a lot of questions, and before I was a Christian, back when I was younger, I fully believed in Bigfoot. I fully believed that aliens were real. Like that to me, it was like I was waiting for the Close Encounters movie to become reality, and so it was a journey for me to become sort of my journey to wokeness. I don't, when we say woke, it's not like the social woke that you always hear, it's really woke in the sense of like, man, well, I guess the best way to describe it would be Dr. Heiser, Genesis 6, his explanation of Nephilim and that whole thing. That when I got his book, The Unseen Realm, I was like, this is amazing. I was so stoked. And I was like, it was my dream. For me, personal favorite episode was Dr. Heiser. I still remember when
that's tied.
when I emailed him, and I don't even remember how I found his email, but I emailed him and I just asked him, would you please come on our podcast? And I thought for sure there's no way he's even going to respond. I still remember when I got the response in the email, I was in my office in the basement. I ran upstairs. It was late at night. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And I woke my wife up. I was like, Dr. Heiser said he'd come on. And then I was afraid to respond with like, when would we do this? Because I didn't want to mess it up, Yeah. I was so much of a fan of him and his work, because I'd been listening to the Naked Bible podcast, and I'd been listening to Fringe Pop, on YouTube, and I was just consuming so much of his content, and it was just shaping me in ways that teaching the Bible for 16 years never did. And it's not weird stuff. It was actually pieces coming together that had been kind of disjointed for me. For the longest time. So that's kind of like, for me, the last 2 years has been a journey.
Yeah.
And I feel like every kind of, when you and I do the whiteboard and we figure out like, hey, what do we want to do episodes on in the future? Every time we do it, I like get more excited about, because there's stuff I'm going to get to research. And
yeah, I remember I'd come up to you with like topics, and I was like, hey, do you know, so I'd say something like, hey, we need to do, we should do an episode about this. And then you're like, back in the day, and you just look at me and you're like, wait, what is that? And I'm like, oh, this is a thing about this. And you're like, wait, what is the other thing? And then I'm like, so I'd sit there and like tell you. This is like, early on, because I'd say stuff, and you just look at me and you're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, this is just something, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yo, what? I'm like, read this.
Yeah, you would have some stuff that I was just like, oh man, I didn't know what, I'd never even heard, some of the stuff that you were bringing up, and so it always was like, okay, well, I guess I have a new rabbit hole to jump down, and I'd always tie a rope around my leg, when I jumped down the hole, so somebody could pull me back. Yeah, so that was, for me, that was like a journey, and I remember. What was cool is, and this is one of the reasons, Rachel, I wanted you on, was because to join us is because Rosie's sort of like our veteran conspiracy theorist or whatever. He's been diving into this stuff for years, like since he was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of getting awakened to it, and it was interesting to me, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about. But then
I feel bad.
Why do you feel bad?
Because now you can't like not talk about it.
Well, no.
Well, I feel bad. I just feel bad for like, I'm like, oh no, I ruined somebody.
Yeah, you
like,
never.
One guy that actually like gave me a second to talk about some weird stuff. I'm like, no, now he's ruined. He's just like me. Can't stop not talking about it. Every time he watches a movie, he can't stop and go like, oh, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that?
Yeah, I do. I owe some of that though too, because what I did is I started to consume all of these OG conspiracy guys.
Yeah.
Like conspiracy theories and unpopular beliefs. I think
Isaac Weishaupt.
Weishaupt. I mean, that guy's amazing. Like, I mean, literally, he knows his stuff. Like, I would listen to the guys from Canary Cry, or I'd listen to, there's just so many podcasts out there of guys that they've literally paved the way for other podcasts, and like stuff that I'm discovering, they knew about, like they talked about it years ago. And it's always going to be that way. There's always going to be new people coming into the revelation of these things down the road, and they're going to need people that have already ventured down there and sorted it out and wrestled with the thoughts and understood the stuff. And in fact, this leads me to one of the questions that we got. Someone said to me, is your family on board with the topics you guys talk about? Do they think that you're crazy, or do they agree? And I think that's a great question, because man, well, Rach, what do you think? Like, I know.
So, well, part of my journey was, as I said, in my introduction episode, was back when I first was pregnant. There was a lot of things I began researching that I had never delved into before, and that completely shifted my previously held belief systems that honestly were just my belief systems because I had been told that's what you're supposed to believe. And so after diving into all of that, and then just continuing to research things before just agreeing to things blindly, like I started to ask questions on so many different things. And I think it was like 2018 or 2019 it was 2018 when I started diving into things like, let's say what's on our products, what's being put into our water supply, why things are allowed in, pharmaceuticals, like the FDA and their revolving door with all of these different pharmaceutical companies, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just like, why is this like being allowed? Like, who is allowing all this? So then I started reading into, who were like the founding oil families and who was involved with like, basically false flags around the world. And like, as I kept reading this, which I had a lot of time to do because I was being a baby, that's when I'd be researching. I remember just being like, I need to just like lay down and not get out of bed for 3 days because of all this information that I started like uncovering. And part of it was, different people I was following on Instagram or different podcasts that I was listening to, yours being one of them, that was helping me dive into different cults or religious beliefs and stuff. And at the same time, we were going through a period of really getting down to like the core of our belief system and what are we believing? Is it because we've always been taught this, through our particular denomination or non-denomination or whatever? But why are we continuing to do it as a family? And so that helped me like dive deeper into things like the Catholic Church's influence on modern day Christianity, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was like a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. And I haven't even fully dived into that one to the extent that I could. But I don't honestly think that many of my family members listen to this podcast because some of it is just so far out there for their viewpoint. Now, some of the things like, I would go and talk about with my mom and she's like, oh yeah, I knew that. But it's like, it's usually stuff involving like the Clintons and stuff. Like there's other things that haven't broached the conversation yet. I think it'd be really cool when, mine's finally open. But yeah, especially after Michael Heiser's podcast, I was like the mind blown emoji for like the rest of the month. It was crazy. And suddenly, like even the Bible, I began reading it with a whole new lens. And that was really honestly like over the past few years, the beginning of me actually knowing why and diving into why I was believing what I was believing and being okay with being very wrong. And also being okay with being wrong as I learn more.
Yeah.
So that's been like my journey. And I don't know that my family's necessarily been on board, but it's okay. Just me talking to my husband about stuff and some things he was like, no, really? No. And then as he dives into it, he's like, wait a minute. And then the other day he's sending me the CIA document of the bloodlines of the Illuminati. And I'm like, hey. And then we've been diving into some interesting, like, what we think about biblical cosmology, et cetera, et cetera. So that's been really interesting too. Just being able to have one other person, especially him. It'd be really hard if he wasn't asking these similar questions too.
Yeah.
But it's been cool being able to ask stuff alongside him and talk about it together, and really what we want to do as a family with what we know. And obviously we want to homeschool, but it's just like, it's put a whole new perspective on how we do life, honestly.
Yeah. 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 In our family, you know, it's a lot of dinner time conversations, you know, around the dinner table, and, not everyone's fully there, you know, in the family. Like when I say fully there, I mean, like, if we were to talk, for instance, about a special day in September in 2001, you know, probably the day between, you know, the day after the 10th and before the 12th, you know, of September, we would have all very strong opinions about it. There's some of my family, not my immediate family, I would say, but there's some of my family that would just not get that and understand it. And they wouldn't grasp it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you start to look, and this was part of the process for me, was that one of the reasons that I was even open to look at some of this stuff for the first time in my life with really open eyes, and not just be like, you know, because the term conspiracy theorist was literally coined by the CIA as a way to discredit people that were examining the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so the whole term conspiracy theorist, and the negative, you know, connotations that it carries, was literally made up by people that were trying to get people from searching on the truth, you know, looking at the truth. Mm-hmm. And so I had bought into that psyop. You know, I thought tinfoil hat stuff was like a real bust on people, and, you know, cutting on them or whatever, you know. And so when it came to, and I always reason that, like, well, there's greater theological things we should be talking about anyways, right? Mm-hmm. And there are really important, you know, Jesus is always going to be king no matter what, and it's important to always keep him there. But when I started down that journey, part of the reason that I was really open to being able to talk about it was because the church had really failed me, and I was wounded. I was like, I kind of wanted to just, you know, like, I don't mean to be so harsh or graphic, but I wanted to give him a middle finger. I loved the Lord. I loved Jesus. I was so grateful for his forgiveness of my sins and saving me and giving me his Holy Spirit and putting purpose in my life. But man, the people in the church had really wounded me, people that I looked up to. And so I was carrying some hurt. And so it kind of gave me a new avenue of exploration that I wasn't expecting, you know, for me personally. You know what I mean? So I think because it wasn't typical theological research, and what does this commentary say about this topic of soteriology, you know, or some Calvinist doctrine or something like that, and it was something that was a little bit fresher and a little bit more it was a little bit more out there, you know. And so it was just like, okay, you know what, I can look at this. I know what I believe. I'm not going to ever compromise what I believe. And if we do research and we do share and it doesn't line up biblically, then I need to repent.
Yeah.
You know, we need to repent, because that is not good. That is wrong. And we would never want that, you know, we would never want to lead someone into a weird place anyways.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like a strange, you know, place. So, yeah. So my family, like, I have some, like, over Thanksgiving, we were with some family and they're pretty much woke, in my opinion. You know, I could bring up, if I wanted to bring up the bloodlines of the Illuminati, the cabal that run, the 13 families that run the whole world and have from the beginning of time, they would be like, really cool, what else, tell me more. You know, if I wanted to talk about building number 7, they'd be like, cool, yeah, I know, I've heard of that, you know. So, but there's others in my family that we just won't be able to have that conversation, you know. And maybe in time. You know, what's cool though is I know my mom listens to this podcast. So who knows, Mom? Okay. You're getting red pilled.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I want to say like well, obviously since I don't have a family of my own, like not married, don't have kids, that kind of stuff. I can't talk about, my kid, whatever,
Right,
my
yeah.
wife or whatever. But for me, I guess, they're like down to listen to anything for the most part. Like my mom listens to this podcast. A couple of my aunts listen to this podcast, which is kind of, it's weird. But and then I have like friend like friend what am I trying to say? Parents of my friends. Why can't I think of that?
Yeah.
That like listen to it is weird. So
Friends'
there's-
parents that listen
yeah,
to it.
yeah. So and they're all cool with it. They want to talk, but I guess they're pretty open about. Well, I was gonna say I've always just been this way. So like I guess my parents just got used to it probably pretty early on when I was kind of an odd kid. I used to carry around like one of my aunts loves. My mom comes from a big family, so I have a lot of aunts. I remember like literally when I was 4 or 5, I used to carry around this briefcase filled with like paper, like just blank pieces of paper, notebooks and stuff like that, and I just carried around this briefcase. I have no idea why, but like I was obsessed with like writing.
Dude, you were hitting you were grinding it out at 4, man.
Yeah. So,
Boss baby.
yeah. But I mean, so from the start, I was just like always a weird kid. So I don't think that they were surprised. And I read a lot. Like I read a lot.
Yeah.
As as a kid, like
You still do. You still read a ton.
Yeah. But I always read like stuff. I don't know how to say this without sounding like super pretentious or anything, but I read a lot of stuff that was older than me,
Yeah, sure.
like above my grade level. I read stuff, so I was reading like weird stuff, and I most of my childhood, like during that time, was overseas, and we lived overseas and didn't, like making friends is tough when you move to a new area, and I grew up with the internet.
Yeah.
So I was really I was super connected immediately to the internet, like just being this weird nerdy kid as is. So like I grew up on the internet, and I just was like, my internet friends were always there. Like I was on forums. Yeah. So I was 11 when in 2001, I'll just say that. And it was like, I think the year before that, I remember like coming across like weird, like Alex Jones's video about Bohemian Grove. I think it came out in like 99 or 2000. Like I remember when it first came out, because I was like, had no friends, and I just sat online, and like I was in weird internet forums talking about weird stuff like this. And so I just came across like these weird conspiracy videos, and I'm like, this is so cool. And it started out like,
Alex Jones.
I remember when Snopes,
Dude, yeah.
back when they used to have urban legend stuff. So they used to go through and debunk and give like history of urban legends and like all this stuff. So that's how I started, and like looking for, I mean, I think this is like pretty benign stuff that like weird kids like me were into. So I was looking for like hidden messages in music. Like, so I was like starting off with like that kind of stuff, and then, backwards messages in like what's hidden in movies. So that's like, cause I wanted to be a film director originally. So I was obsessed with movies and stuff. So looking for websites, hidden stuff in movies, or, like a pretty simple thing for a kid, like got me into all these things. So
Yeah.
that's how I got introduced to it. And then, 2001, I was already online. So then that just kind of
It like
spiraled.
opened the world up.
Yeah. So I think I was just perfectly there. So I'm sure that there was just tons of conversations. I'd come back like 12, 13 and telling my parents about like some weird stuff, or like, hey, did you know this and like this movie? And they're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. They're like, but that's really cool, And
And
like,
then you'd leave the room and they'd be like, I don't know what's wrong with him.
they're like, yeah, well, dude, something screwed up. He was like carrying around a briefcase when he was 4 or 5. They're like, obviously he's weird. Like, they're like, I guess this is just how it goes. But anyway, so yeah, so I think my parents are like, my family, my sister, they're all supportive. They'll listen to it. They'll entertain it. They'll watch
Yeah.
like documentaries and stuff,
Yeah.
alien
Well,
stuff, or
I don't know if you guys experienced this, but when Epstein didn't kill himself,
yeah,
it opened so many opportunities and so many things sort of started to come to light
yeah,
that people had been talking about for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
So things about like the human trafficking and the, the pedophilia and the satanic rituals and the Clinton body counts and all that stuff started to click. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, they weren't conspiracy theories. There's truth to this."
yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, like, one of the big things, like, I was like in, like, when Pizzagate broke,
Yeah.
like 2015, 2016, I was like in it. Like, I spent a lot of time
Researching, doing
help, like, in all the stuff that was coming out,
Yeah.
like, because that's what I like to do. So I was finding.
Dude, I remember reading about that when it was happening. I don't even remember who was posting about it, but it was like 2016. And I was like, does anybody else know about this? And they're like, oh, conspiracy theory, not real.
Right.
And I'm like, you kidding me? Like, being able to watch something happen in almost like real time or as people are analyzing it over social media, I think is very different than when, like, it used to be just a news station that would break something,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I remember, like, one of the biggest things about that was that there's that guy. So that was like something I remember, like, telling my parents about and updating all the time. Because when I moved back, I guess when I moved back up here from Florida,
Yeah.
where I was living by myself, just want to say, like, moved back in with my parents, but it wasn't because I'm like some weird person. It was nice. It wasn't weird.
Right.
Like, when Pizzagate, when stuff like that was breaking, I'd be like, hey, you should check this out. And they're like, whoa, that's pretty weird. Or, like, I'd send them a video and they're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Or, stuff like that. So that was another thing that was pretty cool that they, like, that's pretty out there.
It's like confirming to, like,
Yeah.
because they're like, whoa, Rosie was talking about this back,
Yeah.
in the day.
Right. But it's cool. Like, I was going to say, that was like a big thing, I think, Pizzagate, where I was sending stuff to my friends and they're like, so I'll say the term family of, like, close friends of mine, where, like, that was some stuff where all of a sudden they're like, that's pretty weird. I don't know how to reconcile that with, like, not with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, for me, I think that was the biggest thing that I don't think anything from that, like, since then, friends that were like, there's nothing there, have since there's nothing that's happened that's made them been like, oh, that's interesting. Like, if they were in on Pizzagate,
Yeah.
some of the stuff that was found there,
They stayed in.
like, they're like, well, they didn't, like, dive into it, but they're like, okay.
Right.
Does that
Okay, I
make
got you.
sense?
I got
So,
you. Yeah,
like,
yeah. I see what
The
you're saying.
Epstein thing, like, all my friends were like, okay, like, this is pretty crazy. And you were also talking about that other stuff, so it reconfirms them. But, like, you know what I mean? But there's still people that are like, nothing weird happened with Epstein. Like,
Gosh,
so
I can't
there's
believe-
just people that just never get into it. Like,
Which reminds me, no one's talked about Ghislaine.
I
haven't heard anything about
No.
that woman.
we've never seen mugshots.
Never,
So she's
nothing.
not. She's still up in New Hampshire. She's an informant, anyways.
So, yeah. So, that question about, like, does, like, who,
Is our family cool? So, yeah.
yeah, it's great. I can't wait for the day when your son comes up to you and says what mine said to me like a week ago. Dad, yeah, what's up, bud? Did you know that there are lizard people that are literally ruling the world? I was like, I did know that. And he goes, Dad, no, there's videos. You can see them. You can see their eyes. They'll blink, and you can see the lizard eyes. And I'm like, wow, that's cool, dude. And like, in my head, I'm like, all right, how do I navigate this conversation without ruining my son?
You need to
I
just-
know what video he's talking about, though.
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
that video.
You just need to give him money. When you're like, dude, that's good. You're right. And then here's $20.
But
See, it'll
Rosie, I think
Okay.
Rosie, I think we would have been friends when we were kids because I had a talk show. Me and my siblings would record talk show episodes on, like, our tiny little, like, cassette drive,
Yeah.
and we'd bring on different guests. We'd have commercial breaks and everything. But I was also kind of like that weird out there, like, researcher.
Mhm.
And I think part of it that, like, I stopped for a little while because people were like, you're so weird. Like, they didn't want to hang out with me. I was 12. I was writing, like, novels of, like, Lord of the Rings magnitude, and people were like, why can't you
Yeah.
just like, be a normal teenager? And I was like, okay. But no, never lost like that, like wanting to dig deeper. And so I think that is what like really drew me to your podcast, just because of you guys were touching on these things that like mainstream people weren't, and they need to be talked about. And you can't just keep like turning a blind eye and going and watching your favorite TV show and pretending like stuff like this doesn't happen. So,
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to hear, but like these things will be brought to light, and you can either be aware of it now or you can be completely dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And
I was gonna say it's interesting. It's weird. Like, how do I say this? We were talking about this earlier, just before like recording. We were just saying like it's weird now how like all these people, just going off of what you just said, are like some of the like this stuff is like all mainstream. Like the stuff we read all last podcast.
Yeah.
About the Great Reset.
Yeah.
Other than that letter, whatever.
Yeah.
That's all mainstream stuff. Like, because we were talking about, now normal people are talking about the Great Reset, or normal people were talking about the Jeffrey Epstein thing. Like, that was mainstream, like news and stuff. And I will say it's always funny because, like, early on, I was like, I'd bring up some topic or something, and even it's weird. I feel like I'm always on like we're always like on the end of it.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, everybody knows about this. Like, of course, like the Chinese social credit system back in 2018 when we did it, I was like, dude, doesn't everybody know this? And all,
yeah.
It's now. I'm seeing people now like
right,
bringing it up in conversation. I'm like, yeah, they've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, but it's always it's funny because I always think that like we're behind the curve when we talk about stuff on this, like on the podcast. I'm like, yeah, this is like common knowledge. Everyone knows about this. And I'm like, oh yeah, not everybody in the world reads weird stuff. So like, no, the majority of people don't know about it. So it is weird to see like all this mainstream stuff, like people that that are finding out about all this stuff, because like what you said, it's going to be brought out anyways. It's just
right
that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to have a little bit of validation,
Yeah.
when we talk about stuff, like in fact, I haven't had a conversation just this afternoon with a couple. They're my age, a little bit older than me, husband and wife, and she loves history, and she was asking me about because I had a conversation with her about a month or two ago about the Freemason influence on our nation. And she was like, what do you mean? I don't understand. And I was like, well, like literally every monument, every special building in DC, like the cornerstone's been laid by the Freemasons. They were funded by the Masons. Most of the founding fathers were Masons.
Can I tell you something real quick about this?
Yeah.
I had someone accuse me of being a Freemason.
When?
Recently.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. Anyway, it was really funny.
Just because we have a secret handshake?
Yeah.
Come on. Were you wearing your Gmail apron?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
And I was sacrificing a goat. But yeah,
other than that, I don't know what
made
they
me
were
remember it. I was like, yeah, it was so funny. Sorry, keep going.
So anyway, so today she was like, oh, tell me more about what you were saying, about the Freemasons and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. And then her husband was there, and he's definitely not had the conversation with us. And I was like, yeah, it's just, most of the founding fathers weren't Christians. They were like, Freemasons, which is the occult, and then or deists. I said there was a couple. There was like a Catholic and another guy that was like Anglican that signed the Declaration of Independence. I said, but for the most part, the Freemasons kind of put it all together, and anyways, that whole conversation, you don't have to rehash it and everything. I'm trying to be sensitive to their privacy too, but the whole conversation, if I wouldn't have done research, wouldn't have looked into it to do the couple episodes we did about it, which I've done even more research, and now I'm like, man, I wish I would have known this or I would have known that, but it just was sparked. The whole thing was sparked because I was driving down the street in DC, and I kept seeing all of these Freemason symbols everywhere, these cultic, symbols, and I was like, we got to figure out what's going on here, and until you open your eyes and start looking at stuff, you don't realize it, right? And so my hope is that I'm opening eyes slowly, like with some of these people, because the reality is when things really get moving along in high speed, it's going to happen I think it's going to happen quicker, and people are going to have a real hard time digesting the reality, when it comes down. And so that is kind of like what I think, a purpose of this podcast. Like one of the purposes that kind of developed out of this podcast was for us to be a bridge from the normie to the red pilled or the woke in the church, the believer, for the believer to have a bridge, a pathway into some things that they're not going to hear in their churches. Now, if churches would just start preaching this stuff, it'd be, connecting the Bible to some of this stuff. I think it would be really great,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know you'd have some people leave your church, which is fine, but you'd probably have some people come because they'd be like, man, I've been wondering that my whole life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of interesting, just because I guess we kind of try to keep them relatively brief.
Yeah.
That's like a good way to say like a pathway that we're like easy to, I guess, get into, but by no means like are we trying. I don't think we're trying to be like the definitive.
Oh heck no!
Like
not the
biggest
expert. We're not the experts.
By no means. So like totally, like for me, because I'm a reader, I'm always like want to give people like books and tell them like no, you learn how to like.
Right.
I want people to learn how to research for themselves and like dig all this stuff. So like if any episode is like interesting, like the biggest thing that would be so cool is like, but I guess I should preface this by saying before what I say is the biggest thing that would come out of this podcast, the coolest number one thing is obviously someone who is not a Christian would become a Christian.
Yep.
Like get saved through this podcast is obviously the number one thing. But for me, the second thing would be like something that we talk about and then someone gets into that and like starts to read and like sends us stuff and like gets into it that like wasn't researching stuff and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I wanted to read about the Freemasons, and then all of a sudden they're like start reading all this stuff. Like I want to bring more people to like
do their own
thing, like so
kind of like pursue, like get a passion about it. And,
yeah. So don't like just listen to the 2 podcasts we do about Freemasons and just like be content.
Yeah, there's so much more.
Go out there, and like read all the the stuff and look into the weird stuff.
Yeah, like
I want to promote that as like people.
Well, we need it because they need to be able to know. It helps them. Like when I dig out stuff, it helps me sort out my worldview to that topic. But we have great listeners. I've had listeners send us like someone sent us the Bloodlines of the Illuminati. It's like a 300-page document or something like that. It was crazy. It was huge, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And it was because I think our episode with Jesse after Jesse Sabota was on with us, and I think that's cool. That to me is like sharing and helping. Like I'm totally down with that. I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of my friend's mom. I'm saying shout out Mrs. S because I know she'll listen to this. So, like she sent me a ton of the stuff for the BLM stuff, like that episode we did.
Yeah,
like
the spiritual.
Yeah. So friends and like people send stuff all the time, and it's really cool. And that like makes me so happy.
We will gladly if it's not weird, like too weird, we'll gladly use that. I have no problem.
So please send stuff, find stuff, start reading.
Yeah. And it helps us honestly because like you have a full-time job, I have a full-time job. Rachel, you're taking care of family, kids.
No, I didn't mean like that.
No, but I mean it helps us in the sense of like if you have a resource to share with us, it helps us because that takes an aspect of the research out that we would do to prepare for a podcast on top of having a family, having jobs, all that stuff, so it does help.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's useful, it'll help. So don't send me a journal from Blogspot about the Ebens, how you met the Ebens. So one last question from the Instagram. What is your and Rosie's goal for the upcoming year? and mine is to make it to the rapture. So, avoid getting the sticky, getting the vax. That's probably my biggest goal is don't get vaxxed.
Same.
Yeah.
But I think on a practical level, like we have some cool. We'll start from technology level, and that's another thing I want to say is that when we started the podcast, like I went and bought like a Amazon mixing board and a cheap mic and in a interface, and it was good for us, and then the Lord gave us like top notch, like we're talking top notch gear, a couple $1,000s worth of gear the Lord gave us to use for like 6-8 months, and then I was able to save up to buy because they were just loaning that gear to us, and I gave it back to them, and we bought some of our own gear. But my personal next step for us is to go streaming. So when we record this, like we recorded it Sunday night, we'll record it, but I would like to stream it as we're recording it. So you can still get the podcast from it, but then you can also stream it and watch it live on YouTube, Twitch, or wherever we put it to. So my next step is to invest in some cameras and some lighting. And
I will say you're still never going to see my face.
Yeah, I know.
So
you're gonna be like the unknown podcast host, like the unknown comic, the guy that put the bag over his head.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, Rosie's.
I'm actually saving everyone.
You're camera shy. Yeah.
I mean, among other things.
We don't want to break all those hearts. Those girls are gonna, like when they see that beard and those tats, they're not going to be able to resist. For real.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of what I want to do, and so we'll have some video content that way, just with the and
the two out of the two good looking ones that are good for the camera will be.
I don't know if I'm good for the camera, man.
But yeah, so that's cool.
We have to. It's like if we want people to watch, Rachel needs to be the face of it. So.
Any other goals?
And from a technical standpoint, we want to expand that. So if anybody wants to give, it's going to be a couple grand, so we wouldn't mind, having that. But I think we want to continue. I think it's really cool to me because I really do believe that the Lord has his hand on this podcast.
I hope so.
And I really do believe it. And he just keeps showing us the new next kind of phased step to go through. And like every time, a lot of times I'll just be driving and I'll be, just thinking, and an idea for an episode will pop in my house or in my mind, or a series will pop into my mind, and we'll bounce it off of each other, and we're like, yeah, let's do that. That'd be cool. And that kind of stuff, I just really feel confident God's going to continue to, give us that.
Show you that. Yeah.
But yeah, the 2020, and here's the other thing is 2020 has been so amazing in the sense for truthers and conspiracy guys, because it's been so absolutely insane with content. Like literally you could just do weekly updates. Well, guess what happened this week? It makes it really easy. And people are thinking seriously about what in the world is going on, And so I don't know.
And it's not just like out there anymore, like where it used to be so, seemingly so far-fetched. Even if you were sharing articles and like documents and studies and stuff with people in the past, now it's like in your face, it's a news article and it's on somebody's social media and you're like, what is this? Meanwhile, people who have been talking about it for years are like, they just it's all coming out now.
Just scroll right by it. Oh, I knew about that. Like, I mean, if you would have talked about chemtrails, right? 2 or 3 years ago, people were like, it's contrails and not chemtrails and blah, blah, blah.
They wouldn't do that.
Right, yeah. Why would they put heavy metals in the sky and control the weather and try and get us? And then you start talking about Skynet and 5G and how it all is going to work together. Now it's like it's almost like a conversation over coffee, like or in the line at the coffee shop. Like, yeah, so did you see the chemtrails last night? Yeah, they're crazy, huh? Yeah. It's not even strange for some people, Yeah. But so I think, I think moving forward we'll continue to do that unless the Lord puts something else there for us. And yeah. So
Yeah, but I guess overall we have no plans of stopping. For
No.
sure, by no means.
yeah, by no means. I mean, we've done this through a pandemic. I mean, I remember when it first started. Rosie, you were at your house, and I was just sitting here by myself in my basement.
Yeah.
And we didn't have video. It wasn't like Rachel where we have her on Skype and we could see her. It was just you and me. You'd call and we'd use Signal or the
No,
phone.
we did.
Did we do Skype?
Yeah, we used I think I want to say Signal video chat because
Did
had it
we?
at the computer. Yeah, because we did one on porn. I
Yeah.
remember, and I remember sitting there, and then we did a couple of them. Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes my brain doesn't let me finish things. We did an episode. Obviously, everyone listens about porn, so I remember sitting at the desk, looking at the resources about how porn is bad.
Right. Yeah.
Let me clarify that. I wasn't sitting there watching porn while we were talking. Okay.
Oh man, I hope not, man.
No. But I do remember we had video. Yeah. So we did
Yeah.
a couple of them.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it was weird.
It was weird. It didn't
Yeah.
feel the same, but
Yeah.
but once we got into it, it felt the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But anyways, so Rach, you got anything that I mean, other than Rachel's gonna launch her own podcast someday, so for the future.
Someday. I mean, there's a lot of topics that are so that I want to keep fleshing out with this podcast too. But then there's a whole lot more that I think would be good on a different platform. I mean, there's a lot of rabbit holes that are not just political or historical. There are some that are currently relevant to what a lot of people are blinded by every single day, and it's usually involving what we put in our bodies, and so that's something that I would like to start talking about more and more. Not because I believe that everyone is out to get your body as well as your soul, but
They are.
crippling a lot of generations
Mm-hmm.
by either sterilization or creating horrible nutrient deficiencies or creating a lot of mental issues. Like, those are all things that can be used to cripple civilization as well. But I would want to keep talking about, even if not like something that piques your interest immediately, it will after we bring on guests or we start diving into those rabbit holes. So
Yeah.
I mean, for the future, I think that's what I would like to talk more about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm down for that.
That's why we have her here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You're the expert.
Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear us?
Here we go.
Of course, as soon as Rachel starts talking, her internet goes wacko.
The FDA.
Yeah, the FBI, the FDA working together to
They knew.
crush your internet so you can't talk about this.
I hit the cord.
Oh, you did it to
My
yourself,
own
Rach.
incompetence holding me back.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. So 100 episodes in the books, man.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to share?
Oh, I had something since I always do it.
Oh, the Did You
I had a
Know?
Did you know?
Oh, well, you did that early on, and I was like, oh, okay, so that must be his Did You Know?
Oh, no. I just wanted to say that because I thought it would be kind of funny to say, like, hey, did you know?
Okay.
100 episodes. But you know what? If you made it to this far, I'm good for you.
Okay.
So there is this. Did you know that there is a toilet ghost that's Korean? It's called the Chuksin. It's a goddess.
All right. The Chuksin. All right.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
hope I
goddess
pronounced it.
from the toilet.
Yeah. it
Porcelain goddess.
says- yeah. No, it's known as the outhouse deity.
Oh, jeez.
It says this deity is known to be fierce and hostile, since old-fashioned outhouses were very dark and dank. Yeah, smoking that
Dank.
gurky.
Dang.
Smoking that sticky green stuff.
Incidents related to outhouses were considered as attacks from evil forces, resulting in a curse. This was why in the past, when one fell into the waste at the outhouse or into a compost box or pile, a simple ritual was called for with an offering of a fresh rice cake. The Chuksingakasi sorry. the ghost or the outhouse deity maiden, so it's a woman, has long hair, and when someone enters the outhouse in a startle, she chokes the person's neck with her locks, which results in an illness so grave no shaman or healing ritual is able to cure it.
Wow.
This is why one needs to make coughing noises before entering the outhouse. But anyway, so that's why whenever I go to the bathroom, I always cough while entering, so I don't get choked out by the chuksakuzi, or however it's pronounced, the Korean.
I guess if I was like a deity that was like banished to outhouses, I'd be angry too.
Yeah, especially if I was a girl.
Right, like you want to see all that.
Yeah, dude, I remember I always used to say that I would want to be if ghosts were real. When I ever did that, I would want to scare. I wanted to be in the bathroom and just scare kids so that entire generations would never get potty trained. I thought that'd be so funny.
You only say that because you wouldn't have to deal with them. All of the parents would be like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right. When you have a kid trying to potty train, it's every day, like every hour, you're like especially like these parents that potty train with they don't put anything on their kids. They just let them run around. You're going to find ghost poops. Talk about ghosts. You're going to find ghost poops in the house. You're going to find a little puddle you'll step in by accident. And because they don't tell.
Yeah.
They don't tell their kids. Yeah. Anyways. Yeah.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, it was awesome. That was good.
Thanks.
Guys, let's we praise God, thank him for 100 episodes.
Yeah.
And we thank all of our listeners for every single one of you that listen and encourage us and reach out to us. And even you, Sippy Dick, I'm really grateful for you.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rach, anything you want to add?
thank you guys for asking me to be a part of this. It's so much fun to
course.
talk this kind of stuff with you. It's so great. And I've met so many other people through it, and just sharing the kind of content that we talk about here has really led to a lot of really good conversations and just, you know, continued interest in pursuing truth. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes,
Keep going. I'll tell you what I was thinking of later.
and sometimes some really interesting blog posts that you come across, and you're like,
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, like, she's like, oh, I get to meet all these really cool, interesting people. I was gonna say, I don't. That's our whole the podcast. I mean, yeah. I'll say this. This is kind of interesting. People may not know that, because we never posted a picture of me
Right.
on Instagram.
Right.
This was weird.
Your arm made it in once.
My arm made it in once. But
I'm going to take one right now.
No,
I'm going
no,
to
no,
take one right
don't.
now and post it on Instagram.
But what was weird is that there'll be don't seriously don't.
No, I won't. I'm just kidding.
Is that I can see you doing that.
I'm sorry. I won't.
Is that there's people that know me that like I know in
Yeah.
real life that
Yeah.
would like listen to the podcast, and they'd be like, okay, like I'd be standing next to you, and they'd be like, Turner, that was a cool podcast the other day.
Right.
They'd be like, okay, you gotta tell me who's Rosie.
Yeah. I
And then
remember
you're like,
that.
you'd literally like point right next to me, and you're like, him, and they're like, what? And they're like, you? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I didn't know that. I've been listening. Oh my god. But it's really weird that there's people. Anyway, I don't have any interesting people ever that I meet from the podcast.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say I get kind of the opposite. Please, interesting people, talk
Right.
to me.
Well,
But
if
at the
you-
same
but
time,
you won't give
it's
out-
because nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
Like, so the thing.
Your social media is completely blacked. No one knows where you're,
No one knows who my social
how to
media
reach
is.
it. Yeah.
Anyways,
I might dox you out one day.
don't do it.
And then you just
I'll be
got to be
so
on the
mad.
camera.
I'd be so mad.
I would never do that.
All right.
All right, guys.
All right.
Hey, thank you for listening. And
We love you.
we love you. Yeah, we do. And we'll catch you next time on All Out War.
See you.
Take care.